Westphalian in his breeding. He's again a very different type to some that we've seen. Going to bring you a score though, just before we see Karen come down the
Yeah, I
centre
want to
line.
know what it
Rebecca
is.
Breitling and Caravaggio the second, and Rebecca Breitling for Australia have gone into the lead on
Wow.
30.4. Interestingly, here we've seen quite a
Interesting.
big
Yeah.
difference from the judges, and it was 64.58 from Marilyn Payne and 74.58, 10%
Wow.
difference, but 30.4 by point 4 goes into the lead with that score of Tammy Smith and Kynan still to come.
And that just shows you those different viewpoints, right? Because sometimes I would say if you had to reflect back on Beck's test, you would say every once in a while Ernie maybe got tucked back just a tad, but he's very correct in the way he goes. And so maybe Marilyn can see when that happened a little bit more easily than the judge at B, right? So that's the difference. But then another score comes through and it does go above. So I'm going to go ahead and give you this one, 67.71 from the judge at C for Tammy Smith and Keenan. 76.04 is what comes through for B. So it's a 28.1, and that will put them a little over 2 points. Even with her error, it is good enough for the lead. And so very nice test by Keenan and Tammy Smith to take over the lead here in this 4-star division at Galway Downs.
So I called that one. I got it right.
You win. I just didn't know. I thought the test was so stunning, but I just didn't know if the little dyslexia on the first center line would cost her, but it is enough to hang on.
It's interesting, isn't it? I'm looking down through the scores, and the second last flying change got a 4 from Marilyn Payne, and from Sudhir Vrathor, the scores in for her, which you look at the marks, and it was a 6.5 from the judge there, so 4 to 6.5. It's interesting. I love looking at the comparatives of the test. But let's go back to Karen, because this horse is going very nicely, as you said. Good. Clooney's such a lovely horse, isn't he?
And you guys can do that too if you want. You can visit evententries.com and check out the scores. Click on them and see exactly what we're talking about too if you want to dive in for a little bit of a history lesson there. Here's that second walk pirouette. This another horse with a beautiful overstep in the walk.
There was talk of the pirouettes going in the test, that they were going to get rid of them, because we can see why you'd want to see horses in the walk, the trot, and the canter show the difference between the collection, the extension, that they can go on and back as they do in the show jumping and the cross country. But when do we need a pirouette in either of the next two phases? What does it actually teach them? Because we're teaching them that they go off the leg in the lateral work, and I'm going to come back to that point again in just a second, the lateral work. But the pirouettes, they seem a little bit pointless to some. They're quite difficult to judge and to see what's the correct size. We're looking for the size of a trash can lid, really, for them to walk around. But they must keep, as you said, that activity, engagement of the hind leg, that they keep stepping, that they don't get stuck. Getting stuck or momentarily pausing is what the judges really don't like, and that's when they all start stinging you for those penalties. And we just had a jump behind in the flying change. It wasn't as clean as it could be.
So I think that's an interesting movement, and we didn't talk about the setup for that yet, Spencer, so I'll just talk to that briefly, because it comes out of a half circle there, and then really you only have a few seconds to get straight, and to do the change correctly, you really need to be straight. So I think that actually makes that movement somewhat difficult, because you have to execute your circle perfectly and a little bit early almost to be straight.
Yeah. And there you can see Karen went on the 4 and the horse was more on the 5th stride. And that's why we saw the slight miscommunication between the horse and rider. But going back to the lateral work, because you said there was a difference in the marks, is that Marilyn Payne will see the shoulder ins in both directions. She'll see the half passes in both directions from head on, whereas our judge at B will see them from the side, and it's very difficult at the side to see those angles as the judge at C sees them.
Yeah, and I mean, keep in mind too that there also are moments where it says the test reads half past right, straight ahead. That's part of the
Yeah,
movement, right? So
yeah,
Marilyn's going to be able to really tell the straightness, and that's going to factor into her score. And what I always find is interesting is if you talk to these judges, they actually have a preference of where they like to sit. I mean, they'll sit
yeah.
wherever, right? Wherever they're given, but they have a preference on where they like to sit. And I always figured it would be at C, but some of them it's on the side. And it is just a very different viewpoint.
Yeah, it certainly is.